How do you pin down what's rumor and what's fact? I mean, I imagine that international trade statistics, are they reliable, or energy export numbers? How do you go about doing all that investigation and documentation?
So that gets harder and harder as time goes on, because what sanctions do is, like anything that's made illegal, is it's pushed underground. So drugs are illegal in the United States; they're not particularly difficult to get. There's all sorts of clubs and sticks and threats being issued to people: "Thou shalt not ever collect a cargo of crude from Venezuela." But of course, they do. So we have two of our correspondents followed this very closely, and so there's this very interesting set of games that they'll play. Is that they will what they would first do is they would turn their communication systems off, so these tankers would go dark. Then they will actually invent new grades of crude. So a Venezuelan crude will arrive in Malaysia and it'll get turned into something else that doesn't exist, and it'll get sold to China. And everyone will say, "Wow, we know what you're talking about. That's not Venezuelan oil." They now will take tankers that are being actually literally broken apart and being pulled apart for scrap and are sitting somewhere on a coast of India, and the registry of that tanker says the tanker is actually in Venezuela. In other words, there are these identity games. So this is a little bit, it's kind of a whack-a-mole sort of strategy that, you chase after one group of people, and eventually, the business ends up in the hands of somebody else. So you can do some of that by following the actual physical movement of the tankers. But again, that gets harder and harder. So sometimes you have to rely on people who are literally at the port taking a picture. This is the name and the registry of the tanker that's there, which may not correspond to what it's telling the international, because there are, maritime traffic regulations that say, this is, how you're supposed to be communicating, and the same as air traffic control you would have, there's similar maritime control. So there's all these games being played in there. And sources, sometimes you get documents, sometimes you can see it. And you'll see PDVSA is the state oil company. I mean, they literally, it's like they have to create an entire set of shell networks to be able to sell a single cargo of oil. They have this trade with Iran, which Iran will try to bring in gasoline, and sometimes they'll leave with something else. So the United States is not at the stage where they're literally going to assault a cargo on the open water, because that's basically an act of war, but they'll do basically everything short of that.
This is reminding me so much of the unforgettable scene in King Leopold's Ghost, where Edie Morel is standing at the docks watching the ships come back from the Congo. Right? Do you remember that? Gosh, really, really detailed stuff. I was wondering, Angus, now you've got a new job in London covering financial crimes. And I was wondering, we have a question from the audience about drug dealing and to what extent the Maduro government is involved in drug trafficking. And I would sort of add, I was wondering if you have a sense of that. And also if you can talk to us a little bit about the money laundering and how all these sanctions are avoided. I mean, presumably there must be loads of international banks and companies that are complicit in helping all of this continue, right? The illegal oil exports or drug dealing, if they're involved.
I mean, so I think the kind of the allegations of kind of drug trafficking against the government are probably they're kind of the kind of holy grail of investigative reporting in Venezuela, in the sense that I think for years, I think reporters have been looking for really kind of hard proof which implicates people at the very top level. And obviously, I think and this whole kind of slew of indictments coming out of the US, which have implicated pretty much everybody up to, including Maduro in the drug trade. And most of those indictments are based on testimony from kind of officials who defected from the kind of the Chavez or Maduro government, and went to the US and then told all to the Department of Justice. And there's and there's also there's the key case of which Maduro's wife Celia Flores.
Oh.
Oh.
Hi.
So
You back?
Sorry. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Maduro's wife Celia Flores. That, two of her nephews were arrested by the DEA. During a sting operation in Haiti, during which they were attempting to sell sell cocaine to undercover DEA agents. So and both of them were then convicted in the US. Actually, earlier this year, I tracked down a kind of former bodyguard for Celia Flores, Maduro's wife, who had been kind of extradited to the US a few years ago, kind of on drug trafficking charges, and he told me that she had been kind of apprised of her nephew's dealings in the drug world. And that's definitely, I mean, for me, that's kind of the closest I've ever been able to get in terms of finding a witness who can attest to the very kind of top level officials at least kind of awareness in what's going on. And then I think as you go down the command chain of the Venezuelan government, and you start looking more at the level of kind of troops in the military, or sailors in the Navy. I mean, a lot of them definitely are kind of facilitating local level kind of drug trafficking. I mean, mainly because obviously the rule of law is close to non-existence, and their salaries are so minute that I think any opportunity to earn more money is extremely welcome.